I've just been talking for like a solid 10 minutes and I realized that I forgot to hit record. That's really nice. That's really cool and nice and cool. Okay, so Genshin Impact did something stupid. I think just like dropped the last nail. That's not the name. I think something regarding Genshin was the straw that broke the camel's back, I think, recently. I'm deeply pissed. I have not played Genshin Impact in a while now, more than a year, because I stopped playing during Sumeru for similar reasons to why I'm complaining about things now. However, I think Genshin Impact, and I will say, MiHoYo as a company has gotten to a point where I think people should not be playing MiHoYo games. Not only shouldn't be playing MiHoYo games, I think that people should be actively calling out the company for racism and actively making the word know about how racist both this game and this company is. And the fact that everyone, like, even the people who criticize it are like totally fine with playing the game, with promoting the game, with not calling out people who still do, not talking about just how truly racist Genshin Impact is, makes me feel a little bit crazy. Let's start from the beginning. The straw that broke the camel's back of this discussion for me is the release of the newer characters from Genshin, the characters from Natlan. If you're not aware, Genshin Impact divides its story in Archon quests that each take place on a different country in a different region of the fictional world of Teyvat. And the places of Teyvat are very like visibly and openly based on real world places. And they were all announced since the game's conceptions. They were announced a long time ago. And the newer region, the next region, is a region called Natlan that is meant to represent the Pyron element, or the fire element. Will have a thematic of war. And the cultural influences of Natlan were ones that everyone was already aware of for a while. Because the only character, because they always do this, they always reveal at least one character from the region before they revealed at least one character from each region on the promotional video that revealed all the regions a long time ago. And the only character that was revealed was one called Yansan. Now, who is Yansan? Yansan is an orisha of the Yoruba culture, which is an African culture that is like the origin of a lot of different cultural expressions. I know about Yansan because Yoruba is a part of the Afro-Brazilian tradition regarding candomblé, which is an Afro-Brazilian religion that is very prominent on my area of Brazil. I live in Salvador, which is northeastern Brazil, and the presence of orishas and the culture surrounding orishas is very important for that area. Even though there's obviously like prejudice regarding people who practice and that type of thing, even Catholics are aware of some orishas and are like follow some traditions and some parties regarding them. It's very complex and very rich, and there's a lot of stuff about it. I know people who practice the religion. It's a big important cultural phenomenon. And when people knew about Yansan, the assumption was going to be, okay, this would be like an Afro-Latino region. That was the assumption that people made about Natlan since that first character was announced. And that still seems what they're going for. However, here's the thing. Genshin Impact has a big issue regarding representation, right? That's something that people talk about since the game came out, since Mondstadt and Liyue were first shown. There's no black characters. There's like a few tanned ones. There's Kaya, which is like, in retrospect, it is kind of crazy that they added Kaya so early, considering how they would, show darker skinned characters throughout the duration of the game. And there's Xinyan. But generally, the game never included all the characters so pale, even the tanned skin tones that they added to the game were still pretty much white, honestly. I guess that's an example of color theory. Everyone like behaved like the tones of the characters in Genshin, of the 10 characters in Genshin, were much darker than they actually are. I think mostly out of comparison because everyone else is so paper white. And then Inazuma came out, and also no white characters. Not no white characters, no black characters or brown characters or any darker skinned ones. And at the time, the big argument about when people complained about the lack of diversity in the game was wait for Sumeru, wait for Natlan. Those are the two regions, because Sumeru is meant to be based off Swana and Natlan is meant to be based of Afro-Latino countries. So if you want that representation, wait until they get to those countries, wait until they get out the countries of the darker skinned people. That's not a good argument because, you know, I feel like trying to act like there's no black or brown people in East Asia and Europe, even in the past, is really stupid. But that's not the point. The point is that was the main argument, that was the main thing. And then, but I knew in the bottom of my soul that the chances are they were not going to add actual darker skinned characters when those regions came. And then came Sumeru, and they didn't. That's one of the reasons why I stopped playing the game. They didn't add darker skinned characters. And not only did they continue making the characters really pale, but they also made, and that's the part that always gets me, that I feel like people don't really talk about enough, is the fact that there are black characters in the game. There are brown characters, darker skinned brown characters in Genshin Impact. They're the villains. They're the Eremites. They're like a faction of evil guys in the game. And they're dark skinned. Not only dark skinned, they put like braids on them, dreads. They put like more cultural things on them, on the villains, not on the playable characters. The playable characters of Sumeru are like extremely pale. Like I'm not even like just white. I feel like there's some of the characters of that region are like especially white, even for Genshin Impact. And I was like, okay, that they're racist. That's the thing. But then came Natlan now, and Natlan once again, characters extremely pale. But not only are the characters extremely pale, because in Sumeru there was the characters were whitewashed, but at the very least there seemed to be some cohesion in terms of which aspects they wanted to take from each from the countries that they were taking inspiration from. It was still like mixing Swana countries and some African countries into a monolith, especially like northern, like in Egypt, that type of stuff, into a monolith. But at the very least, it seemed clear which elements and inspirations they were taking ideas from. With Sumeru, the characters are extremely pale, extremely white. There's a girl who is not only white, but she's also has like tan lines, which is like crazy, dude. Like tan lines where are kind of tan lines that are meant to look like tribal tattoos. So she doesn't have tribal tattoos. She has tan lines that have the like format of tribal tattoos, which is worse. I think I feel like that's worse. And again, villains are darker skinned, and also, which fucking pissed me off so much, someone made a list of like, based on name, there was the leak of the names of the new characters that are coming from Sumeru, and there was a list of the inspirations for the characters. God, it pissed me off. Basically, I'm going to, I don't know, man, it was like, basically, they're grouping working Yoruba, as it was mentioned before, Afro-Brazilian as well as Nigerian culture, with Aztec culture, with Mayan culture. And so that's kind of expected. That's like Latino Gen culture. They were going to mix a bunch of those anyways, because obviously they weren't going to dedicate themselves fully to a single, like they were just not going to dedicate themselves fully to a single country like that. That was obvious. But then it's not only, then he jumps Native American, as in like the United States culture. It's already weirder because, you know, it's Native American. It's like a completely different thing now. That's not Latino anymore. It's another indigenous country altogether. And then Hawaiian, again, different thing. And Pacific Islander culture, like Maori. You're grouping Maori with the rest of as well. Like that's so bad. That's so bad. I cannot stress enough how awful. Like it feels like it's calling the people from each one of those places a slur, because what it's saying is, because like grouping. Do you understand how far away like Latin America is from like on the Pacific Islands, or from like put a map in your head. There's the Latino countries, there's Africa, there's a Native American culture, there's Hawaii, the Pacific Islanders, like completely different. The thing that there's all of those places have in common is indigenous people. It's cultures that were outcasts from society and seen as savages and tribal by their colonizers. Like that's the thing that ties all of those places together. And Mihoyo went and was like, okay, we're all the same. Let's put them all in a single, all of them in a single country, in a single region. That's so stupid. That feels like they're calling like indigenous people, like as a concept, tribal savages. Like that's the deal. That's the feeling of what they're doing by doing that. And again, that's similar to what they did already with Sumeru. So all of this is kind of expected. And honestly, it's really making me reflect about the fact that like this game is so racist. And I'm not just talking about the representation. I'm not just talking about the way that it groups the characters together. No, I'm talking about the story, the text of the game. Genshin Impact is a racist text. It's telling a racist story. And I feel that each time that passes, it feels like Mihoyo is doubling down. That's a word. That's a phrase, right? It's doubling down on their on that racist note, on the fact that on the text and on the story being racist and on the game being racist. Because here's the thing. In order to explain this, you gotta know a little bit about the story of Genshin Impact, okay? The story of Genshin Impact, you follow the Traveler, which is going to be either the girl twin or the boy twin when you start playing. And they're traveling through Teyvat in order to find the mysterious god that separate them from their other twin. And the unique thing about Genshin Impact, story-wise, and I always thought that was really interesting, is that it's based off of Gnostic mythology. Gnostic like belief. What is the Gnostic belief? Gnostic belief believes that there's a fake god, that the god that is actually it believes that there's a difference between the god of the Old Testament and the New Testament, and that the god of the Old Testament is a fake god, the god that is like praised through most churches and things like that. That's a fake god. And the real God that Jesus Christ represents and that type of stuff is a different God. And that the fake God was the one that created this world with the purpose of trapping us inside of it. So the world that we live in is a prison meant to like trap the richness of our souls into flesh. And that experience like diminishes or like spiritual connection or spiritual richness, and it's made to make us suffer. Our experience is made to make us suffer, and that we need to ascend once we die to meet this true God, the true God that is beyond the fake God being the demiurge. That's like the basic idea of most versions of Gnosticism, and that idea is at the basis of Genshin Impact, because the helpers of the demiurge are what are called archons. They're like the forces that keep controlling the earth with the demiurge. And Genshin Impact, there's a huge implication in the game that's the case for the gods of the game, the archons of the game, that they worked for this evil god civilization called Celestia that theoretically control and harvest the people of this world. And that seems to be the direction. Like there's a bunch of things like, the sky is false, the wishes, the constellations are false in the universe of Genshin. There's a bunch of lore regarding that. And because of this, normally the Archon quests are again very focused on the Archon of the region that is visiting. And here's where things get weird. So you would think that the Archons in Genshin Impact would be villainous figures, right? They would be people where you, the traveler, would be fighting or would be trying to wrestle against in order to liberate the other people of this world, right? Or that it would be leading to the eventual downfall of the Archons. But no, and here's the reason why. Because Genshin Impact isn't really interested in challenging forms of power. I think that's one of the key aspects of the narrative of the game that not only breaks the entire premise, but also is so noticeable once you start noticing, essentially. Because here's the thing, Genshin wants you to paint yourself as like the rebel people who are going to eventually rise against Celestia and like free humanity from the need and the claws of the Archons. But they also want to show the Archons and offer the Archons as playable characters. And they also want as playable characters for the Archons to have an appeal to the player. Because here's the thing, Genshin Impact somewhat has a dating simulator aspect to it. As an aspect of you as the traveler meeting these new people and hanging out with them and becoming friends with them. And that's one of the fantasies that the game sells to its players. And the game doesn't want to abdicate that to the Archons, which are like some of the most popular characters of the game. So instead, they will just normally redeem the Archons, either redeem them or not make them evil to begin with. So then they can make them become friends to the traveler, and then it can become a dating simulator or like just a friendship wish fulfillment type of thing. But it's not, but this logic doesn't only apply to the Archons. You can also see that to the other playable characters. So let's go back to the Archons for a bit. This is like something that has actively heard the narrative of the game before into creating some baffling plot points. During the time that I played, the Archon of the region from the time that I played, the main region from the time that we played, was the Raiden Shogun, or what was her name? I forgot. It was Raiden. Yeah, Raiden A. And she was introduced as a dictator. She's like, the story was heavily based on the authoritarian rule of the shoguns of feudal Japan, and also on the isolation that Japan went through. And the Raiden Shogun was meant to be a dictator representative of those qualities, and she was persecuting people and taking away their visions being like the gem that is used in Genshin Impact for you to have abilities, which represents the wishes of people, and she was confiscating them and ultimately making the people of Inazuma miserable. She was like covering them with storm clouds and isolating the population, making this she was an authoritarian leader. And there was a rebellion faction, which was being made and brought up in Watatumi Island to fight the Raiden Shogun. So you think, okay, this will obviously culminate on everyone going to fight the Raiden Shogun and then like taking her down. No, what happens is that it gets revealed that actually the real Raiden Shogun was inside the Raiden that we were fighting. The real person, the real Raiden A, was inside the Raiden Shogun, and the Raiden Shogun that is evil was actually a machine that was like made to act like no emotions, because the real one was actually just sad because she lost her twin sister, and she was actually manipulated by the Fatui, which the Fatui are like an enemy faction working for like fantasy Russia, and the Fatui were actually behind all of the evil all along. Raiden, she's so innocent, she suffered so much, she spent so much time meditating, and then at the end you fight against the Fatui. Like the big boss is the Fatui lady, and then the rebellion is solved by literally having like a peace treaty between the leader of the rebellion, Sangonomiya Kokomi, and the Raiden. And it's so stupid. I always thought it was so stupid, even at the time that they had this cop-off. But that's not the only time that they did this cop-off. Even when I stopped playing the game, then they went to Sumeru. And in Sumeru, they also did, they also like again, try to make the Archon narrative as innocent as possible, playing that the Dendro Archon was like trapped and being used by its citizens and didn't have like any connections with the outside world. And I would like to give, before the narrative was already problematic with how the plot used Watatumi Island in Inazuma, because Watatumi Island is like, the whole deal with Watatumi Island is that it's an independent island. It's an independent state from the rest of Inazuma, and because of this they didn't bow to the shogun rule, and that was like a point of contention between them and the shogun. They in the end like shake hands and like just accept to stay. Like the Raiden was still in power in the end of the Inazuma quest line. And Watatumi people just shake hands with their oppressor, you know? And even though like a guy died, but only an NPC, because we can't add any complexity to any of the playable characters. The playable characters cannot die or be morally interesting. And then on the Sumeru Archon quest, they had a very interesting plot point, which is the fact that like, so justification for why the Sumeru people look the way they do. They look like super white and etc, etc, etc. Why they're like, the theme of the region is that there is more to like the wise. There's the Sumeru Academia, the type of stuff. And the thing with the Dendro Archon is that actually that area in the game used to be lived by the people who used to live in that area were the desert people, the Eremites. And they were driven out of that region, and they were segregated to the desert, and they cannot be allowed back in. And instead, the oasis, which is the area of Sumeru, belongs only to the academics. And the Eremites in the game are the only characters that have actual dark skin. That's like a segregation storyline, and it's played totally for fun. There's no, like, I think maybe one of the characters in the game has association with the Eremites, but isn't actually Eremite. There's no characters in the game that are actually fighting for the faction, nor there is an interest in taking down the government structure of Sumeru. These guys, the Eremites, are just villains. They're seen as a nuisance. They're seen as the version of that area of the desert of the treasure hoarders, which is another villainous faction that also doesn't have, the treasure hoarders doesn't have playable characters from that faction. And it's not even like they don't put any playable character from villain factions into the game, because there's Fatui characters, but not treasure hoarders. And I feel like they're not, because treasure hoarders are poor. Treasure hoarders are villains, but they're poor villains. They're pathetic, you know? And then here's the pattern, right? Like, that's a pattern in the Genshin Impact narrative. There's a pattern of the traveler siding with the oppressor instead of the oppressed. Of even when admitting that an area is being oppressed, the solution is always for the traveler to go to their politician friends to have a solution where everybody gets along. And all of the playable characters are always people with political power and with they're rich, a lot of rich people, a lot of rich institutions that the traveler is friends with, and those institutions can never be broken because the traveler makes friends with them, and it's ultimately a wish fulfillment. There's a wish fulfillment aspect of it all. Wouldn't it be cool if you were an important person in all of these countries, if you were a hero and related and friends with the politicians and with the rich people and with the people who are changing the direction to the regular people? Like, that fantasy, that class fantasy is at the core of so many Genshin Impact storylines, and it's a big reason to why they don't offer any societal change in any of the quests. Not only this, but there's like actual racist dialogue being portrayed from this game. In the Sumeru, Paimon was notoriously very racist during that game. She would make comments, Paimon being like the little girl fairy thing that is like, that appears in like every Genshin thing, like main character essentially. And like, she's the main companion of the traveler, and she's like very racist during the Sumeru's questline. She calls the food bad, the people bad. She's like, and in Fontaine, which is the region right after Sumeru, the region right after Sumeru, which is like France-based, they meet an NPC who is a reformed eremite, and she has dark skin, and the traveler straight up goes like, "You're not from around here," and like meets the eremites in Fontaine, and is like, "No, the eremites are attacking," like just by looking at her. She's the only character with dark skin. At one point when she's like all dressed up like the other people of Fontaine, he calls her well spoken. She's like, "Oh, you're so well spoken now." The villain, the way that the cultures are being portrayed in both Sumeru and Natlan is very dismissive of the actual cultural aspects of the countries they're taking from. In Sumeru, there's the sexualization of belly dancing attire, which, you know, isn't... the problem isn't the ballet dancing or making a character that is a belly dancer. The issue is like sexualizing that and like being that exotic figure. With Natlan, like the character design is absolutely incomprehensible because they're trying to take inspirations from completely different cultures just because they have the feeling of being tribal. Because ultimately, that's how they see those areas. They see them as like people there. They see indigenous people as just like tribal individuals that are similar that they can take just inspiration from. And the clothing that they're using also seems to be heavily influenced by like streetwear, which is also notoriously correlated with Black culture. It's like streetwear with hard edges, with like some Mayan inspo, with some like it's very all over the place. And you see in the trailer they're going to fight also a guy who has much darker skin than everyone else in the game, who also has braids. And you know, the game already gave a lot of indication that was already racist even before this, because for example, the game includes a creature called a hilichurl. A hilichurl is kind of like the version of the game of goblins. And there's someone implied to maybe have once been people. It's kind of weird. And the game also implies that it may be possible to communicate with them. But the attempts of communicating with them seem as both stupid and also, why would you want to communicate with them? They're so savages. And then you look at hilichurls, and then they're portrayed as like, oh, they have masks. And the masks have like these markings in them, and they have they dance around in circles, and they live in tents and stuff like that. And there's a behind the scenes video showing that the movement and the animation of the hilichurls is based on real world, real life native people dancing. So they saw, and the idea of the hilichurls that they meant to represent like fully savage tribal individuals, fully savage creatures that have no salvation, and that the correct way to deal with them is by killing them. And they based off their behavior on native people. Because, and then now with Natlan, they're like showing like, oh, okay, all of those cultures are the same, and also we're going to make the playable characters all white, and you guys are going to fight Black people. And there's another aspect, which is the Pyro Archon. They're saying that the Pyro Archon is going to be based off of a Spanish musketeer. And here's the thing, if Genshin Impact was a better game, I think that could be interesting. Because I think making the warmonger ruler of a Latin-inspired country be an European is actually really cool. If you were planning of taking them down, if we're planning to destroy them. That's not what Genshin will do. What Genshin will do is that they will make a narrative have some conflict about how much the Archon loves war, and then they will have like a thing about how actually it's good and Natlan is all like unified under the same banner, under the same Archon, because otherwise they would be fighting more, because they would be different places. Like that's 100% what they would do, because that's what they did within Azuma. That's what they have been doing each, like if I recall, Fontaine also has a narrative about how the Archon was also oppressing its people, and then they like push it under the rug later because they're not interesting. Genshin Impact isn't interested in telling actual compelling stories, and that makes them feel like bootlickers. That makes them feel like oppressor defenders. And in the case of Natlan, Sumeru, and these other texts in the game regarding like native people and Black people, and the fact that there's no representation in the game, all culminates into building an Orientalist and racist message, because what is the Traveler doing? So the Traveler is going around fighting essentially and saying that it's good that these places are being commanded by this mighty being, is going around fighting against factions made of poor and black people willing to survive, is going around being friends with rich people and of these orientalist and racist caricatures of minorities. And MiHoYo has a track record with this. In the game Honkai Impact, there's a character named Carol, which is meant to be black. She has like really pale skin, but she is black. And her story is to her mother, which, by the way, her design is fully a black woman. That's like, they're capable of doing like a black woman, a dark woman, but she's not only a black woman, she's also a masculinized black woman. And there's an understanding that Carol grew insecure of her appearance because her mother was too harsh with her, and she started injecting whitening to her skin, and that's why her skin is pale. And she's also portrayed as being like sweet and spicy. She's the sweet and spicy girl because she's black and has a sweet personality. So here we have racist stereotypes regarding black women as being masculine, as being brute, as being spicy, which is a concept that comes back in Genshin Impact, because the woman characters in Genshin Impact that are like even a little bit tender, a little bit darker than the other ones are always like pyro characters. So there's like 3 or pyro characters. They're strong, they're loud, or they're like very soldier and focused on the war aspect of things. And with Carol, like there's even a dialogue, like this fucking ridiculous dialogue where she's like, I don't like my skin color, and you can go, like, is beautiful, girl. And then, which is like a real like slogan thing, and then she's like, yeah, but I don't like it. And it's crazy that that's like not, it's crazy that they're adding a character that whitens her skin in the game because she doesn't think it's pretty, and then doesn't have another character who has like dark skin to prove that they don't agree with it. Like the implication almost feels like they agree with her, that they think their skin is bad, that they think that makes her like more brute, that her mother is a bad mother because she's harsh, and all of those things, and she like appears like a black woman. And all of these culminate on the fact that Genshin Impact is such a deeply racist game. Like, it's in all aspects of it. Like, I've seen people start to make more racist, like, montages of characters since Sumeru. Like, I've seen so many Orientalist posts and Orientalist videos and Orientalist memes coming from Genshin Impact fans. I've seen like racist edits and racist memes coming from people expecting Natlin, and and also like there's even like the Romani people situation. Like there was a TikToker who recently talked about this, how they added like in Honkai Star Rail, which is a different game by MiHoYo, or Hoyoverse, where the idea is that they made like a fictional race of people that are meant to represent Romani people, and then they added a villain who is deeply racist towards Romani people, and she's still meant to be seen as a girl boss, and then they added a Romani character that is super white and has nothing to do with Romani culture. And that's crazy. Like they're passing like a bunch of stereotypes of Romani people there. The TikTok says it really well, and that's fucking crazy, man, because you know, the entire Europe hates Romani people. Like such a deep, that there's such a deep racist problem regarding Romani people, and Genshin Impact is fully promoting Romani stereotypes, as it is promoting Swana stereotypes, as it's promoting now stereotypes regarding indigenous people, regarding Natlin. And no one seems to give a shit. No one cares. No one is out there going, do not, because here's the thing, there's a lot of people who play Genshin Impact who are just racist, right? A lot of them. Because there's a big issue with racist in anime communities and in anime game communities. And to these people, I know nothing that I say here will matter to them. Nothing here will matter to them. But there's a lot of other people who go and who are like, but they still talk about the culture though. They still make an effort to talk about the culture. You can't be too mean to them. They're a Chinese company. And it's like, first of all, Chinese companies, they can do representation well. Second of all, do you think all the Chinese people have the exact same white pasty, like, skin color? That's not true. Like, they're mostly pale, but they don't have the same skin color. And also, there's black people who live there anyway, even if it's rare. They could still, like, make representation, even regardless of that. Look at this light. Look at Chinese games that do have that representation. But then there's other people who are just like, oh, you can criticize it and still like it. Okay, but you're still giving them your money and your attention and you're promoting it. And here's the thing, I really think it's stupid to think that you're morally superior to someone because of the media that you consume. That's a dumb thought. Consuming media isn't protest. And what in the art that you enjoy isn't going to make you more moral or less moral than another person. But in the case of Genshin Impact, it actively is promoting racism. It is actively promoting, like, just for that dialogue of calling the Aramite lady well-spoken. You shouldn't play that game. Look at all the younger people who are probably playing the game and absorbing that level of racism. That's especially in a time like in the world where like alt-right and fascist ideology have been in the rise. Like, I won't be able to change the actual racist people who are always included, unfortunately, in these fucking weeb communities. I won't convince the people who think it's fine that in the game the only characters that have like a child body type are woman characters, not male ones. That doesn't have certain implications considering the anime communities. And like in code, they're called lollies. Like, there's the people who defend that will most likely also defend racism. And the people who love the over-sexualized and demeaning way that Genshin Impact writes women, which is like a big problem, how it likes to play with the insecurities of girls don't liking their bodies and having issue with fatness, and also insecurities regarding not working hard enough and insecurities regarding money and all those things, but not to actually explore the characters, but more to like make them cuter and then putting them in ridiculous, sexualized, non-interesting outfits every single time. The people who love that don't care about the racism as well. There's so many people who love Genshin Impact who seem to want to still defend it and still be like, wait, this is fucking baffling. Twitter thread. Okay. There's this tweet I found. Someone going, I feel like people really conveniently use Hoyoverse being racist to say thinly veiled racist shit about Sumeru and Natlan. Then someone said, what are people saying? And then another person go, personally, I've seen people be like, Hoyoverse is racist, so Sumeru sucks. It's a great way to just start shitting on the accurate cultural representation in Sumeru, and thirdly, the cultures themselves, as well as weirdly targeted hatred for a few brown characters. Yep, I feel like people are hypercritical of Sumeru and Atlan already, because it's easier to be like, well, Hoyoverse is racist, so it sucks, but a lot of the content still being well-represented culture. It's so sad seeing people hate Sumeru, love Fontaine, hate Natlan, likely love Snezhnaya. That's a stupid comment, because here's the thing, it's not well represented. The stuff that is in the game isn't well represented. They added like random cultural accents. They want to add elements of black culture, indigenous culture, without adding actual black and indigenous people. They want, like, if they were making a game that was just Chinese culture, which is something that they visibly care about because they made a character who is a Chinese opera singer, and they hired a real Chinese opera singer to voice act her and then do like interviews saying how much they care about accurate cultural representation. And then they go ahead and they mix all, like, mixing fucking Pacific Islander culture with Latin American culture, and then native North American culture and places of Africa all together, and then in Sumeru making a narrative about desert people being segregated and like sexualized belly dancing and show Orientalist stereotypes and all of those things. It's bad. You're not doing people from those places, they shouldn't be fine with scraps, with the scraps of the company that loves their culture but hates them, but hates the people, who loves the culture, hates the people, to the people who wants to include ideas behind the game, but none of the things behind those ideas. That's awful. That's awful. While the game keeps portraying its protagonists fighting against black and poor people and siding with oppressors in a company that has had a history of racist storylines before. You shouldn't like those regions, and you shouldn't like this goddamn game. You should go, people should be, the fact that people do like product placements for Genshin Impact, the fact that Genshin Impact is on Game Awards, the fact that people, when bringing up the game, they bring up, oh, it's a weeb game, oh, it's a boring game, and they don't bring up the blatant racism, and they don't warn against to the people who go talk about it, and that's never a mainstream conversation. To me, is deeply troubling, because it is a really racist game. It's not just lack of representation. It's racist at its very core. And here's the thing. I think Genshin Impact could have been great if it wasn't more interested in being a wish fulfillment fantasy game, and instead was interested, which is another thing, by the way. Like, this is just that I've seen people being like, oh, it's fine that there's not black people on the places that are inspired by black people because it's a fantasy game and they can do whatever they want. Okay, so if your fantasy is to take away the culture of black indigenous people without the black indigenous people, sorry, you're a piece of shit. Like, it literally, it's like that one person who's like, oh, why would you add black people into anime? Anime is meant to be escapism from real life, and having black people escapes the purpose. Like, there's so many weebs who think that, who genuinely think that people from the minorities and different cultures in a perfect fantasy world don't exist, and Genshin Impact fosters that type of person. Do you want to get associated with that, with people who think that black indigenous people and brown people and people from like all those cultures being grouped together, people who think that they're just aesthetics, people who think that they're just aesthetics, that they're just a thing to be used, and that they're fantasies that they wouldn't exist regardless? Like, do you want to get grouped with that? And like, there's even that argument that there's white people in the countries that is portrayed. Like, yeah, I'm white and I'm from Brazil, but that doesn't change the fact, like, most people in my city are black. Most of them are black. I'm white, but most of them are black. And like, that's the fact. If someone was doing something about Salvador, you would have to have most of the characters being black. If we're trying to like have a portrayal of most of the population. Because like, if you, like, when people talk, oh, there's white people in those countries, I just think about Encanto. I think Encanto is like a great representation of what that actually looks like everyone very mixed, everyone very diverse, and mostly darker skin tones. And then there's the aunt who's like pale. That's kind of like the vibe of Latino countries, and like those countries that, oh, they have white people too. But here's the thing, Genshin Impact would have been a really good game if it wasn't for, being more concerned with those. There's beautiful things about Genshin Impact. Like, I have empathy with the feeling of having a special interest and not wanting to abdicate of it. I have empathy for that. I have autism and ADHD, and there was a time I really loved Genshin Impact, to the point where I actually played Genshin Impact during my high school graduation. Like, I pulled for Arataki Ito there, which, by the way, super sad Arataki Ito is a Genshin Impact. He deserved better. Arataki Ito, Yae Miko, and Tartaglia, the 3 characters I saved from Genshin Impact in a beat. They're much better than whatever the fuck is happening on that game. And I also played Genshin when my cat died. My old cat died. And it was during the Inazuma quest line, and there was a like short, like a daily mission regarding cats, about taking pictures of cats. And it was on the same day that my cat died. And I felt so touched by that day. And there were a lot of moments in Genshin where I played and I was like, whoa, there's something really special here. Like when you go to Dragonspine and when you go to like the underground kind of in the Komi, in the like the underground sea place. There's just a lot of special things in Genshin. The parts of the story that seem more concerned with the people, and the parts of the story that seem more concerned with the universe, they never relate to the main characters. They're always NPCs. Because main characters need to be wish fulfillment. They can't be interesting. They're characters for you to pull and have friends and like commune with, but aren't actually allowed to be emotional and real, because that would imply consequences and difficulty in the story, which would go against the weeb wish fulfillment of it all. And I don't think there's anything quite like Genshin Impact yet, because Genshin Impact is really unique in that it's a free-to-play game that has the capabilities that are really similar to a console game. It is not exactly like a console game, but the mechanics of the game actually remind me a lot of Souls, like an easy Souls-like. After I played Souls-like after playing Genshin, it was kind of crazy. And it takes inspiration from Zelda and all those things. There's so many people who can't even afford a computer, dude. I was in game dev school for a while, and I remember that there were people in my class that didn't even have computers to practice the coding and stuff in class. Most of the people were going to that with the experience of playing like League of Legends as their video game of choice, and Genshin Impact, because it's free to play games. And even though people talk about how predatory gacha is, which it is, even though I have very unique opinions about gacha, I think there's a place for gacha in gaming, but I don't think a moral gacha still exists, and I'm not sure if it's possible for a moral gacha to exist in a capitalist society. But the idea of collecting characters and having some level of chance when unlocking characters is interesting to me. I feel like gachas should allow you to trade characters like you would Pokemon cards. But regardless, even if we disregard the predatory gacha mechanic of Genshin Impact, and even if we consider the predatory gacha mechanic of Genshin Impact, it's still an extremely accessible video game. A lot of the free characters are really good, and it has beautiful scenarios for a free-to-play video game. And it's open world. How many people had the experience of playing a open world game for the first time because of Genshin Impact? Because they simply could not afford a Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, for example. It's truly, and I think that's kind of special. If Genshin was a better game, or for example, another thing that I think Genshin does really well is the possibility of you being able to accompany a video game the same way that you do an anime. They keep releasing the story bit by bit, chapter by chapter, and you keep enjoying as the game gets built. And I think more video games should do that. I think more video games should be a series with the story being unfolded and you being able to discuss it as it gets released. And all those things combined, I don't think there's anything like Genshin Impact right now. So it's kind of sad for me to be, and it took a while for me to even fully stop wanting to play Genshin. I was like, don't play it. And then you feel FOMO. That game is designed to make you feel a lot of FOMO. But here's the thing. Sometimes you gotta look at what art you're enjoying and be like, is it worth it? Because this isn't just an author being bad. This is the text of the game is racist. And there's other things that are fun too. If you don't have any money, you could try getting into D&D. I think the lore, D&D is also not super clean. It can be pretty problematic in its history, but it was reclaimed by a lot of fans, and they're doing new lore, I guess, and shit. And you don't have to support Wizards of the Coast to like it. I don't know. The Forgotten Realms lore, which is the Baldur's Gate 3, which is used in Baldur's Gate 3, is really cool, and the author seems like a cool guy. He's on Twitter responding things. He seems like a pretty cool guy. That seems like a cool lore for you to hyperfixate on. If you can, there's games like Hades with really hot and diverse characters. There's games like Pokemon. Pokemon, I think, has a similar style to Genshin Impact. Besides everything, there's regions, and the characters are really colorful. And there's a lot of variety in character design. Someone tried to compare the designs of Natlan with the designs of Genshin, and it's crazy because Pokemon has actual diversity. Look at all those anime characters that are actually black. And they you know, they do good representation for Black people. And even though I think most of the regions in Pokemon are like, they have 3 European regions and a bunch of Japanese ones, and then like an American one and a Hawaiian one. There's not a lot of variety, and they definitely need to start exploring other cultures. They canonically have South American in the universe of Pokemon, and we don't have a South American region yet, which pisses me the fuck off. Where is the South American region? Game Freak, stupid fucks. There's a lot of there's a lot of things to get mad about in the Pokemon fandom, but if you like Genshin, you may like Pokemon because of some things. There's other video games, there's other RPGs, there's fucking Elder Scrolls, dude. There's Souls-like. If you think Genshin Impact should be harder, go play Souls-like games. There's a kind of video comparison that implies that some animations in Genshin were probably inspired by animations in Elden Ring. And Elden Ring is like super, super cool, and there is like super, super deep lore. And there's other gachas if you want another gacha. Nothing like Genshin, but you know. And that's the world, man. People should not be playing this racist fuck game. Or at the very least, they should be open about playing a racist fuck game. Stop lying about it. Actually make noise about it. Don't just like lie and get mad every time they do another racist thing and they go, oh well, oh well, oh well, I'll keep supporting the game anyways. Oh, I'll complain here, but nothing is gonna change about the way that I interact with that media, and we're not going to make noise, and it's still going to appear in Game Awards, and big YouTubers are still going to promote it, and no one acknowledges that it's a deeply, 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 deeply racist game. I just think that shouldn't be the case. I think people should talk about how the racist game is a racist game. And also, the characters that do have like slightly darker skin in the game, they have awful kits. They don't get story as much story significance besides Kaya. They have awful like gameplay designs associated with them. Apparently there's also a beta tester who used to work for MiHoYo who said that people were expecting Natlan to be based off of an African country, and then they went, who told you that? And then she was never called to work there again. Like, that's crazy. They're fully aware what people expected, and they still didn't do it. And they still based it off African and indigenous culture and didn't give a shit. And the 10 characters in the game all like have awful kits and don't get as much significance. Most of them don't get as much significance as they probably should. It's truly wild. They aren't made as good as the other characters. I would like to add a few things. I think more than a month since I recorded the first part of the video, there has been updates that I have not recorded earlier. ADHD and really bad procrastination, but there has been updates. MiHoYo has more character designs, has released more stuff about Natlan, and like the trailer for the region, and more character designs, and entered the early act. You know, and a lot of people got upset. Than what I was expecting, which is good. People are like, okay, this game is racist now. This game is actively very racist and is erased cultures. People came forward talking about their experience. They released a teaser of the Ororum. I think that's how they're calling it, and it represents a like really, really important deity in Umbanda and Canobla, which I had already mentioned before, called Olorum, and it's like a super pale guy, and it's genuinely fucking insane that they would do this. Like, this is a really important deity, and a lot of people have come out also to talk about the racism and in the story of Genshin, and like other problems. I saw someone saying how the narrative, Watatumi Island is racist, that they were actively trying to portray a specific ethnicity within. I believe the culture is Hyukyu. The narrative in Genshin even more problematic. I already thought the narrative of Watatumi Island and of the Shogun was very problematic because I recognized as pro-colonialist. Like, it's a pro-colonialist story, and it's a story where you like portray this rebellion and then ultimately continues to give power to their oppressors. And like, oh, Watatumi Island doesn't recognize the Shogun, but they still end up under the Shogun, and the piece is like them talking with Raiden. It's like, and yeah, like the more, like I see, for example, they release foods, the foods of the region, and they have a karaje, they have, I believe it's brigadeiro, they have stuff from other countries. They're mixing a lot of cultures. They're mixing, again, I mentioned before, they're mixing indigenous cultures from all over the world, Native American cultures, Pacific and Island cultures, all the Latin American cultures, Afro-Brazilian culture, like part of Africa as well, which homogenizing all those things is not, but yeah, I recognize a bunch of Brazilian foods, and it's crazy to me to like add a karaje and not add black people, because like a karaje, I'm from Salvador, which is where like people know as the place would find baianas do acarajé. Like, the people who serve acarajé traditionally are called baianas do acarajé here in Brazil, which literally means like someone from Bahia, which is of the acarajé. And the image of them, like culturally, the like iconic image of them that is known culturally is of like a black lady with like a flowy white dress dancing that serves you traditionally a karaje, which is also like religious food. It's religious food of candomblé and umbanda beliefs. Again, extremely crazy to add that and not add black people. And people, and I did see people being upset about it. Like, I've seen, I think the most notorious thing is that there was the MiHoYo boycott account, the Hoyoverse boycott account, which actively started to propagate. Now there's like an image of the article, and it's apparently based on Maori, and that's nuts, because I thought that maybe they were going to go to the direction of like inspiring her for like Iberian aesthetics to showcase like the colonizers. But not even that, they're going to fully base her on a deity of Maori belief. And it's so disrespectful. Like, you cannot, she has like tight thing. I don't even think her design, her animation sucked, but I don't even think her design sucks that bad. But it does not look, she has like a tight thing and eyeglasses, and it's like modern and shit. And you cannot recognize, she doesn't have any indigenous characteristics or any Maori, and it's fucking ridiculous. She doesn't look good. She doesn't look good. She's not a good design. I redesigns of her that look better, and you can truly see like the difference. Actually, the designs in general, a lot of them look better with like darker skin. A lot of those designs are really weird, and like, but yeah, once she was revealed, the Hoyoverse boycott account started to like really push for protests over Genshin, and made a petition to try to bring attention to MiHoYo of like the racism issue. And by the way, there were like a lot of emails trying to complain to MiHoYo the problems with the way that they were portraying cultures. And obviously, I know it's not the job of whoever was like responsible to like send out the response emails, but I saw a response email that was literally the cultures, this is a fictional game. Like, someone was like, I think you're portraying those cultures, or I think you're doing cultural appropriation and you're portraying these cultures poorly. And one of these emails were literally, oh, this is a fictional game, the cultures aren't real, and this is just a fictional game, we're not trying to portray real people, and maybe you should calm down. Like, literally an email saying that. And that's so disrespectful. And they are adding real things, and they know that they're adding real things because they hired a Chinese opera singer to sing for, it was Yunjin, I think the name, like the Chinese opera singer, and they went on record saying that the reason they did that was because they knew that they were portraying a culture and they wanted to portray that culture properly, but that only applies to their own culture. They don't care about the other ones, or rather they care about certain aspects of other ones, and they like to take the stuff that they think is not as marketable. So it's literally cultural appropriation, because the thing is, culture is meant to be shared, okay? Like culture, like people say, oh, you shouldn't use things for, a lot of times you should try to immerse yourself with other cultures. The issue is when you take something from other people and you erase the parts, like you pick and choose and make it about yourself, and take away the parts that aren't marketable, that aren't make the parts that tie into the marginalized people. And again, it wouldn't be a problem to have just like one pale character. I'm Latina, I'm like super pale. The issue is everyone is fucking pale as hell, and the narrative is racist. Again, super pro-colonialist, extremely pro-colonialist. The Aramites was deeply racist. It's trying to paint this image of like pro taking over power from overlords with Celestia, but ultimately not really committing to it, because they want the power trip of being friends with these powerful people, with the gods. Like all the archons are super cool and they're super your friends and that type of thing, and it ends up creating a really pro-power, pro-colonialist message. And the Hoyoverse boycott account was driving a lot of engagement to the topic, and was driving a lot of conversation to the topic, and there were a few voice actors who came forward to talk badly about MiHoYo. I don't know what their status with the company is right now. Sucro's voice actress talked about it. I think Obeido's voice actor talked about it. A lot of them positioned themselves against MiHoYo. Especially the Sucro's voice actress. Okay, yeah, it's any pronouns. Okay, so they talked about it, and they were actually really attacked because they were being very adamant about how disrespectful MiHoYo is being. And I don't know what his current status with the company is, and any of the voice actors who spoke up about it. And there was like a really strong conversation on the topic. Now it's dying down. No one is talking about it anymore. But here's the thing, most of the people who were criticizing were obviously Genshin Impact fans. Again, there's a lot of special things about Genshin Impact. There's a lot of good things about this game that I fully get it. And people want it to be better, because there isn't something similar on the market, okay? The only things that are similar on the market, the only people who are competing with MiHoYo, that are competing with Genshin, are other MiHoYo games. It's Zen Zero, it's Honkai Star Rail, okay? And that's bad, because no one kind of got that gacha of like making a game that feels like a game, that a complete game that is still a gacha, so it's profitable, and that you put it on mobile. No one has got that yet. Like Tower God tried and failed. The game like glitched and crashed a lot. Most of the gachas, even good gachas like fucking Reverse 1999, is still like, the mechanics is just the turn-based, and I like turn-based, but it's like very simple turn-based things, and it's not really about the gameplay, you know what I mean? And you know, people don't want to stop like liking this. There is a feeling in that fandom of like slowly seeing the story progress and liking that video game, that a lot of people as much access to that aspect of gaming before those games, so people don't want to let that go. But here's the thing, I don't agree with the people of the fandom community, of the Genshin community, who are like, okay, MiHoYo is an actively racist company, and this is an actively racist game. I'll just stop supporting it financially because this is a free-to-play game and I keep playing the game. I think you should just stop playing it. Like, I think you should just stop playing, because here's the thing, if you just keep playing the game, you're still, like, there's a reason why these things are profitable. It isn't just about how much you pay for it, because there's a reason why they care about their free-to-play demographic, because they're free-to-play demographic will attract people who aren't going to be free-to-play. These types of games, they don't work on the basis of everyone is spending a little bit. They work on the basis that there's a few people who will spend a lot. And if you keep playing the game, these games will still have relevancy. They will still be called, if you're like, oh, I still like this game, it's just racist, and you're not actively pressured, like, no, you shouldn't give any attention to this game at all, they will still keep being invited to game awards. They will still have cosplayers, they will still have the fan art, they will still have like all of those things, and those things attract people. And one of those people, most of the people who play the game will not be aware of all the controversy or don't care, because most weeps do not give a shit, and they will spend a lot in the game. It's about the few people. The thing about Genshin is that people need to be aware that it is a racist game and you shouldn't give it a platform. I think that is the only way that they could possibly want to change it, because they don't care about like part of their fan base being upset and then just keep playing it normally. They know people will keep playing their game. They know this. You need to actively make, like, you need to make it so the people who keep playing the game, people will know that they keep playing the game because they're racist, because they don't care. You need to shame people for it, I think. I'm not shaming it because I know a lot of people aren't doing this, so it doesn't, I know most people play in whatever. I think you shouldn't be giving platform to like this big ass company who's using their platform to spread harmful stereotypes, to spread harmful narratives, and that they invisibly not give a fuck, okay? Like that's how I currently the Hoyoverse boycott account with the petition. The point of the petition was like, if you have a certain number of signatures, they would like contact ministries of culture. I don't know what necessarily that would do, like, especially because government, it's really difficult for those types of government to actually like interact with those big companies. They want money too. They want the money to keep flowing, whatever. But however you could try, at the very least, they could bring like mainstream attention. I don't know if they're doing it, because next time I checked, they had enough signatures. So I don't know what's the deal right now. I don't know what they're trying to do right now. I do think anything that would give attention to it would be good, kind of. But also, is that there's another aspect of it as well, which is like, this isn't, there's a lot of problems in the world right now. Like right now, Palestinians are being heavily bombed. I live in Brazil, and apparently our country is still sending some fuel to Israel, and I thought we had stopped doing that, but apparently we did. That's like a big ass issue. That I don't see people talking about it. And the US has more blaming to it. They're sending, and that's like a big issue that you should care a lot about, or like how the world is burning to the ground and all those things. So there's also an aspect of me being like, is this the issue that we're contacting government officials for? Like that's the issue, because it's also correlated, because it's spreading stereotypes about indigenous people, and there's a lot of racial tensions, and also of Swana people like Sumeru suck. But maybe it's easier and more effective to just stop playing, maybe they'll change once they realize that their fan base, that they're actively being shunned. Maybe that's what it would take, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like that an approach that would both spare of caring so much about this game, and also maybe is the only one that would actually wield results. Anyways, that's what I was going to say about the video. Just, I think, stop playing Genshin Impact. There's better games. I think you would really enjoy Pokemon. There's a lot more to Pokemon than just the monsters, I'm really into Disco Elysium, but I don't think Genshin fans will like that. But whatever. It's good political. If you like politics, it's good. In the other recording I did, I don't know, play D&D. It's Wizards of the Coast sucks, but I think it's better than Genshin Impact. But yeah, good night, I guess. Please stop playing Genshin Impact. Play better video games. There's a lot of good video games out there if you can. Play Legend of Zelda. I forgot to recommend that one. Legend of Zelda, that everyone always compares Genshin to. That's a good one as well. And yeah, look at my makeup. I think I did a good job this time, even though my lip looks weird. I don't know how to put lip properly, like, under it, especially when talking like leaves too fast. But yeah, I'll try not to post for another 2 years. Bye bye.